Let me show you how it's done. You have to stop being nice. We're running a kitchen, not a kindergarten.
This is Bob, a system administrator. And this is Bobby, the boss of Bob. Also a strong supporter of Bob, as she is constantly impressed by how quick
it's all gonna be downhill from here. Hooray! Another Despicable Me movie. Lucky me, I get to review another one of these. Honestly, after watching Minions, I completely lowered the expectation bar on this one. And to my surprise, it was still awful. Just not as awful as I thought. So let's start with the main plot of this movie. Gru and Lucy are fighting this new villain called Evil Brat who listens to 80s music and uses toys from the 80s to do heists. Which isn't that bad of an idea for a villain if it was just executed right. This villain had a really good premise behind him, but after the opening act, his gimmicks got kind of boring really quick. Anyways, so Gru gets fired from the anti-villain league he was working at because he fails to stop Evil Brat, and then gets informed that he has a twin brother named Gru. Gru then goes to meet Drew, and it turns out that Drew is super rich after inheriting all of the money from their dad who was a supervillain. Anyways, they infiltrate Brat's lair and steal some diamond. And then, ooh, plot twist happens, and then everyone just gets kidnapped by Brat for some reason. And then the next second, he's terrorizing the city with a giant robot version of himself. Gru then stops him by beating him in the dance battle, and that's pretty much it. Other than the bad guy not being very interesting at times, the only other complaint I have with this movie is the goddamn filler. There are about 3 subplots happening in this movie at the same exact time. The first one being the main storyline with Gru, the other one about the minions going to prison for some reason, yeah, I don't really know either. And then the other storyline where Agnes is trying to find a unicorn. To give you a taste of how much filler there is in this movie, 2 of these subplots add literally nothing to the story. You can remove them from the movie, and it would still make sense when you watch it. And you have to understand that this takes up like half of the movie. Why is there so much filler? Why do the minions add literally nothing to the plot? It makes no sense. It's definitely not Illumination forcefully cramming these minions in the movie just for them to sell more. No, they would never do that. But Jesus Christ, this movie is a mess. Final opinion, it's better than The Secret Life of Pets, but isn't as good as The Grinch. B tier. Well, how bad can it be? Am I right? Get it? Because that's the joke. How bad can I be? So, The Lorax is a movie adaptation of the famous children's book written by Dr. Dr. Seuss. The book talks about the dangers of negligence to the environment and how this is all overshadowed by big corporations trying to make money. Now, this all seems like a great message to tell children until you realize that it's the same company responsible for goddamn minions. The whole point of The Lorax is lost when you watch this movie. It's like taking every single moral from the original book, shoving it into a poorly made animated film, and then taking a Fortnite dance in its grave. In fact, the message of the movie is so lost that in its ad campaign, one of the ads advertises a car.
Ironic.
Okay, but enough rambling. Let's dive into the forgettable plot in the movie. Here's an oversimplification of it all. Boy wants girl to like him. Girl tells boy to bring her tree, but tree no exist because company bad. Boy go to Wandsworth to ask for tree. Wandsworth tells boy long and drawn out origin story, even including a musical number which has been stuck in my head ever since I finished watching the movie. Anyway, Wandsworth gives boy seed for tree, boy gives girl seed, and then they get chased by this guy who looks like Roger from the Long Haul movie. There's also another musical number near the end which I'm pretty sure got turned into an overused meme at some point, but then they let the seed grow and then the end. Oh yeah, and I guess the Lorax was also there. He didn't really serve anything to the plot now that I think of it. Bottom line is just watch the original Lorax. It's only like 30 minutes long and is also available on YouTube for free. Anyways, as for the ranking, E tier. Oh god, not Sing 2. Oh god, not this movie. Let's cut to the chase. Sing 2 is complete trash. I can already hear the clicks of the several people unsubscribing. First off, no, this movie is not at all an improvement to the first piece of garbage. It's still the exact same brain-dead movie, just for the second time. Here's the plot summary. Koala wants his theater to be more famous because I guess having a theater in the first place wasn't good enough. So then he assembles the crew, aside from the mouse. Unfortunately, after the events of the first movie, the mouse man was tragically eaten by the bear and died shortly after. May we get a moment of silence for the Family Guy mouse. Anyway, so they go to Vegas and then meet this wolf man, but as they were auditioning, they got rejected. And then the pig guy brought up this musician called Clay Calloway, who is apparently this guy who nobody has seen in the past 15 years. Now, knowing how impossible it would probably be to track and find this guy in 3 weeks, you would think that the koala guy learned from his mistakes of, you know, not lying. I mean, that was pretty much the entire point of the first movie, you know, to not lie. Nope. He lies again. There is literally no character development between the koala guy in this movie and the first movie. He just goes back to his old ways. So then a bunch of stuff happens, and then there's also this wolf daughter that's pretty goddamn annoying. Fast forward a few minutes and the giant wolf man is trying to kill the koala, but then he escapes. Clay Calloway is also here now. The porcupine girl somehow convinces him to join the show, and then they put on the show behind the wolf's back. And then the wolf shows up, and then and gets arrested. Good job, Illumination. You provided literally nothing new to the table. I honestly don't understand how Illumination can keep pulling off obvious cash grabs like these. They have the most one-sided characters singing pop songs. Of course the movie's going to be a hit. I mean, I don't think that the song selections are bad in either movie, but in short, this movie is basically just the first one, except a lot worse. Don't watch it, F tier. Welp, that leaves this abomination for last. Hop is a movie that exists because some executive producer at Illumination somehow approved this. From start to finish. Bear with me here. So the movie starts and we're introduced to this rabbit who is meant to be the Easter Bunny and his son. And then we cut to this guy called Fred who is a jobless disappointment to his family. Kinda like me. He then gets kicked out of his house, but then his sister gives him a mansion to take care of and also a job interview or something. I couldn't care less. Anyways, it turns out that the Easter Bunny's son is all grown up now and he has
This is one of those YouTube Shorts videos, right? Well, yeah, it is a... Those...
Oh my, like, gosh, Bowler. We are literally in an audition video.
An audition video? What are those?
They're like these videos where people, like, animate us doing funny things, and then, like, Zachary looks at all the videos, and then they're like, oh my gosh, these animations suck.
Wait a minute, so you're saying that we're being animated right now?
Duh.
Huh, that's pretty neat. Hello, everybody!
Zaxby's now has funnel cakes, so you can have your cake and dip it too.
You think about calling for a ride? Nah, what's the worst that could happen? You lose your license, you total your car, you kill someone.
All of this is your fault.
What happened?
I single-handedly saved you from the villainous evil computer supreme.
You didn't know such thing, idiot! Zip it! Scat, you actual legend. I always knew you were more than just a pile of droppings. Where are we, by the way?
No time to explain. Look! We've gotta shake them off. Clinch pill power!
They're still after us. What do we do?
We gotta find a time destination.
Wait, are we going back in time? Lit! Well, we can't go back to the present. Evil Computer Supreme is there waiting for us.
Well, where then?
There! Let's get out here! Quick! Everyone okay?
Oh!
What is it?
My chains! No!
Where are we? If what I saw was correct, we should be at...
You can't stop me! I will bring this village to its knees and all will feel the wrath of Como Blue!
If you are on the fence about
Netflix's real-life Squid Game was a disaster. So Netflix had a new reality TV game show based on Squid Game, and whether or not they copied Mr. Beast, one thing's for sure, he did it a lot better than them. Because contestants on the show told IGN that they suffered inhumane conditions, insane working hours, 10 people collapsing on day 1 of filming, and people claiming it was rigged. My gosh. Although props to Netflix for creating an experience that was so true to the original show, near-death experiences and all. But now you know how. Netflix's real-life Squid Game was a disaster. So Netflix had a new reality TV game show based on Squid Game, and whether or not they copied Mr. Beast, one thing's for sure, he did it a lot better than them. Because contestants on the show told IGN that they suffered inhumane conditions, insane working hours, 10 people collapsing on day 1 of filming, and people claiming it was rigged. My gosh. Although props to Netflix for creating an experience that was so true to the original show, near-death experiences and all.
Uber One can save you on rides and eats. Yeah, it's kinda sweet.
Everyone in the Order knew Anakin Skywalker. Few would live to see what he became.
By the end of the Clone Wars, I walked away from him and the Jedi.
The Daily Object Show characters are now on stickers. Check out the link in the description if you want to buy a pack of stickers. Welcome back to a new type of battle, with a prize smaller than normal. 5 contestants will be competing for this prize. Find out who will win right now on the Daily Object Show Mini.
Until you break down.
The votes have been cast, and Checkmark is eliminated. Hopefully you can find some other box of tissues to cry your tears, cause box of tissues is eliminated. Which of the newbies do you like the most? Let's see which one of them will join the game. In our first 3-person elimination, Acid Drop gets the boot. We're almost near the end. Let's see which of these two will make it into the final 2. We've had many votes throughout the season, but this is the one that matters the most. Let's find out who will win the grand prize.
So much anticipation for this fight. This is an unbelievable main event. I might start right.
Welcome back, audience, to the Daily Object Show Mini. This time we have 4 new faces, a Season 1 returner, and a failed debuter from last season. Find out who will win a smaller but greater prize right now. Welcome back to the Daily Object Show Mini. This time around, we're going somewhere out of this world. We have 6 all-new contestants and the really galactic smelling lotion. Find out who will win right now on the Daily Object Show Mini Galactic.
Until you break down.
These 3 outsmarted the rest. Space Helmet is safe. Sadly, can't say the same about Long Egg.
Then let's go! I just know we can do it. Let our quest begin!
Until you break down.
Getting close to the end, Monkey is out. Final 2, S'mores and Car. Let's see who'll win this thing. Congratulations, Car. You are the winner of TDOS Mini Galactic.
Always I swear to God, not simping for a child.
You already read the title, you already know the gist of the video. Today, I will be ranking every Pixar movie. Yes, all 26 of them. Jesus, this is gonna be a long video. So, unlike the Illumination video, I'll actually be ranking these movies by release date instead of picking them by random. Obviously, these are all my opinions, so don't try to find my address and send an assassin to try and murder me. Also, here's a spoiler warning. With all of this said, strap in your seatbelts, grab some popcorn, and to infinity and beyond.
You've got a friend in me.
Toy Story 1, the film that started it all. Without wasting any time, I'm just going to tell you that this movie is amazing. This movie is just so timeless and the humor really lands even 27 years later. So the film is revolved around this group of toys owned by a kid named Andy who become alive when he's not around. Andy then gets a new toy for his birthday, Buzz Lightyear, who is the Space Ranger toy with built-in play features. Buzz Lightyear also believes that he is a real Space Ranger and is oblivious to the fact that he is a toy.
You are a toy!
Woody, who is Andy's favorite toy, is obviously jealous when Andy starts playing with him more. So, he does the only logical thing and tries to kill Buzz by knocking him out the window. Then, with Woody and Buzz stranded in the pizza planet, Buzz gets distracted and climbs into a claw machine designed as a spaceship. They then get picked up by Sid, who is the main villain of the movie, and honestly one of my favorites. I really just love the fact that one of the funniest and most memorable Pixar villains is the sad truth that he is in fact a toy. Woody then teams up with Sid's toys to literally traumatize him so they can escape. They then use Sid's rocket to fall with style and land safely in Andy's car. And yeah, that's it. This movie's only 1 hour and 20 minutes long, and I really don't have a lot of nitpicks with this movie. The humor was great, the animation still holds up, which is surprising considering this is the first CG animated movie ever made. It's honestly aged like fine wine. S tier.
It's the time of your life.
Now, I knew practically nothing about A Bug's Life before watching it, but after seeing it, I can say I was pleasantly surprised by it. Well, mostly because of how low my expectations were. A Bug's Life follows the life of this ant named Flick, who is an inventor and forced to prepare too much that he's secretly scared of the ants because of their advantage in numbers. Tier. So, Toy Story 2 has always been a personal favorite of mine. I don't think it's better than Toy Story 1, but it's definitely better than Toy Story 3. And I think that it's a great sequel, and it explores the Toy Story universe even further. So, the movie starts with Woody accidentally getting sold in a yard sale to this guy named Al, who kinda looks like Lester from GTA 5. As it turns out, Woody is an extremely rare and valuable collector's toy, and he came with 2 other toys, Jessie and the Prospector. As for the toy gang, they go on an adventure to try and rescue Woody. I also love the scene where Buzz gets imprisoned by the fake Buzz who thinks that he's a real space ranger, so Buzz has to prove that he was the real Buzz. It really showed how far Buzz had come and all the character development.
Oh damn.
I also loved Zurg in this movie. He was kind of a one-note villain, but he's easily the funniest part of the movie. Anyway, so without taking Woody and everyone else to Japan for them to get displayed, Woody decides to escape, but not before the Prospector turns on him, revealing him as the twist villain. They then reach the airport where Woody has this epic climax in saving Jessie as she's about to take off in the plane. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Overall, pretty solid sequel, on par on the quality with the first one, so S tier. But first, sponsor time. Are you watching this video on the internet? To the video. Monsters Inc. is going to be S tier. There is no doubt about that. I mainly just love how they turned the simple concept of monsters being in your closet to a whole damn movie. This movie follows the lives of James Sullivan and Mike Wazowski as they work for their boss Water News in a scare factory to get scare energy from kids to power the city. However, after the end of one of their shifts, Sullivan discovers a door left by Randall. He then accidentally lets out the kid in the door named Boo, so the rest of the movie is basically them trying to get her back in her door without alerting anyone else. The next day, they take her to the factory with a monster costume and oh god, not this again! So apparently Randall had been working on a new scaring machine, but ooh, plot twist, Water News was in on it the whole time.
Execute Order 66.
And then they get found out and banished to the Himalayas, where Sully and Mike argue for a bit, but then Sully decides to escape through one of the doors. They do this whole sequence where they get chased by Randall in this room with seemingly infinite doors. Sully then finally brings Boo back to her room as Water News comes in, but unfortunately for him, it's a trap. And then he gets arrested, and the end. Overall, movie's pretty solid. Mike and Sully are easily the highlights of the movie for me. The way they talk to each other really makes it seem like they've been friends for years, and I like that. The villain also wasn't that annoying and actually had good motives. S tier.
Beyond a doubt, my heart.
Finding Nemo. Yeah, I mean, it was okay. It's not exactly mediocre, but at the same time, it's not as good as some of the other movies on this list. It just kinda exists. So anyways, the plot of this movie. After his wife and all of his kids are brutally murdered, Marlin must protect his only son named Nemo. Jeez, that's a dark start. But then Nemo gets caught by a fisherman, and now Marvin must go on an epic journey to find him along with Dory, who is a mentally challenged woman. So Nemo gets transferred into an aquarium in a dentist's office, and he and the fish there hatch a plan to get him out. Unfortunately, the dentist plans to give Nemo to his niece, who killed her previous pet fish. So then Nemo decides to play dead and almost gets thrown in the garbage, but then Marvin and Dory arrive at the perfect time and literally commit the crime of assault with the deadly pelican? Anyways, so then Nemo and Marlin reunite, and that's pretty much the entire movie. It's not horrible by any means, it's just kind of stale in comparison to other Pixar movies, but I can definitely still see why people like it. In my opinion though, it's not as good as I remember it being. B tier. The Incredibles is such a solid movie. Never have I ever watched a Pixar movie like this where I literally stop and think to myself, damn, this soundtrack slaps. Good job, Michael Giacchino. Anyway, so the Incredibles follow the Parr family, who are all a bunch of superheroes but have to live in hiding because superheroes are now illegal. But then Bob decides, screw having a normal 9-to-5 office job, and decides to become a superhero secretly. But it turns out that Mr. Incredible's #1 fanboy, Syndrome, was behind it all, with his plan being to kill every superhero with his robot and then use it to cause mayhem and then defeats it, making him a superhero in the public's eye. The scene where Mr. Incredible finds out about Syndrome's plan is so well done, it still gives me chills whenever I rewatch it. Elastigirl then finds out about Bob being a superhero and along with the help of Violet and Dash try to save him. Then Elastigirl kills a bunch of guards by crushing them with her thighs. With everyone escaping, they go back to the city and stop Syndrome's robot once and for all. But then another plot twist. Syndrome kidnaps Jack-Jack. In the end, it didn't really matter as Bob literally throws a car at Syndrome, which causes his cape to get sucked into a jet turbine, literally killing him. So anyways, yeah, that was The Incredibles. What a wild movie. Banging soundtrack, and best of all, Frozone, my beloved.
Where's my super suit?
Great story, great humor, great characters. S tier. Cars is pretty okay. It's kind of on the same level as Finding Nemo, where it's not a bad movie, it's just sort of mediocre. So Cars is about, well, cars.
Well, duh.
It follows famous race car Lightning McQueen as he races with Blue Car and Green Car. So anyways, Lightning McQueen gets stranded in a rundown deserted town called Radiator Springs after his race. He then meets several people in the town like Tow Truck Mater, who is pretty much an American hillbilly in car form. He also meets Doc Hudson, who used to be the Hudson Hornet, a famous race car until his career ended after the accident. So anyways, Doc Hudson trains Lightning McQueen, and on the day of the race, Green Car cheats because he's a stupid sore loser and hits Blue Car, causing him to crash. So then Lightning McQueen carries Blue Car to the finish line, and yeah, that's it. I don't really have much else to say. The story was pretty okay. Granted, the ending was pretty unexpected, and the characters were tolerable, at least in this movie. It wasn't that bad. B tier. So, the first time I've ever seen this movie was probably when I was like 6 and I didn't think too much of it. And my god, rewatching it, this is the greatest Pixar movie. Yes, I said it. Fight me. I have no idea why, but this movie stands out so much to me because of the concept. It's not like other Pixar movies that have a lot of rules and super complex metaphors. Inside Out. So, it's pretty much just a rat wanting to be a cook, and I find that simplicity so charming. The plot follows Remy, a rat who dreams of becoming a chef one day. He's also a member of his rat colony with his brother and father. However, after he accidentally alerts an old lady, the entire colony is exposed to her. So, the old lady does the only logical thing in this scenario and pulls out a shotgun. The rat colony flees, but Remy gets separated from them in a sewer and finds himself inside Gusteau's restaurant. He then decides to try and cook soup, which turns out is a massive hit with the customers. So then Remy teams up with Linguini, an intern at the restaurant. Oh yeah, and I forgot to mention this movie takes place in Paris. Anyway, so Remy and Linguini start cooking more dishes, with Remy controlling him through his hair. Eventually, a famous food critic announces that he will be writing a review on Gusteau's restaurant, which obviously makes everyone nervous. But when Linguini takes the credit for Remy's dishes, Linguini kicks him out, which obviously wasn't a good idea because he had no idea how to cook in the first place. So then he comes up with another idea. Literally tell his entire staff that some rat has been cooking the food all along. Obviously, everyone thinks he's crazy and literally walks out on him. I mean, what did he expect? So then Remy calls his entire rat colony for backup and they cook because family. They cook the ratatouille dish for the critic and oh my god, he said it! That's the name! Roll credits! So anyways, the ratatouille dish reminds the critic of his mother's cooking, finding the meal so good that he even wants to meet the chef. And he does. He literally meets Remy. I mean, I think that it's completely unrealistic that he didn't freak out when he saw a bunch of rats cooking, but even still, he writes his review and gives a speech in the end, which is probably my favorite part of the movie. The main message being that not anyone can cook, but a great cook can come from anyone. What a solid movie. 10 out of 10. I don't know why I like this movie so much, but I feel as if the simplicity of it is where it shines, which is why I'm putting this as S tier. Great movie, go watch. This is an amazing film. I have no idea why, but these two robots somehow showed so much emotion and conveyed such a coherent and wholesome love story, all while literally being able to speak 2 words.
Shut the fuck up. No one cares about your robot fan fiction.
So anyways, WALL-E is about this robot who is left on Earth after the humans abandon it after polluting it and making it pretty much uninhabitable. Eventually, WALL-E finds a plant and decides to keep it in its little house. One day, a robot named Eve gets sent to Earth from the human spaceship to go check on it. WALL-E then bonds with Eve for a bit and shows her the plant he found. Eve then takes the plant and goes AFK until she is picked up by the ship with WALL-E also tagging along with her. We then get to the human ship where we see that all the humans have practically become your average Discord moderator. Eve then takes the plant to the captain where he is fascinated by it and decides to learn more about Earth. But then when the captain tries to change course for Earth, he is stopped by this robot who kinda reminds me of GLaDOS from Portal.
You are a horrible person.
Because apparently it is against the robot's orders or something like that. Yeah, he was just kind of a one-note villain at this point. Unfortunately, WALL-E gets crushed by the robot, but then the captain does something unthinkable. He stands! This is the greatest movie of all time. They then put the plant in the machine thing and return back to Earth, where Eve repairs WALL-E but finds out that it's completely wiped out his entire memory. But then they hold hands and then remembers, and it's just so wholesome, okay? I love this movie way too much. It's so ahead of its time and it's so beautiful. All in all, this movie is fantastic. Easy S tier. Once again, another Pixar banger. This was probably the time when Pixar peaked in movies. So up follows Carl, a guy who was obsessed with explorer Charles Muntz. He then meets Ellie and marries her, but then after Ellie becomes sick, she dies shortly after. Jesus, that's a dark and depressing start to a movie. So after Carl literally attacks somebody with his cane, he's forced to live in an elderly home. He then decides to screw everything, attaches 1,000 balloons to his house, and floats away. Oh yeah, and there's also this kid called Russell who accidentally got on his house before he took flight. So they eventually reach South America where they meet some blue bird called Kevin and also a talking dog named Doug. They eventually come across Charles Muntz, who's been living there all of these years along with his pack of dogs obsessed with finding Kevin the bird. Anyway, so one thing leads to another and now Charles Muntz is committing an act of arson. Carl and Russell then infiltrate Charles' blimp where they retrieve Kevin and oh god, he's gonna go! Oh, and he's fallen to his death. Oh, that was anticlimactic. Jesus Christ, I don't remember Pixar movies being this dark. So yeah, that's the end. I honestly can't name anything bad about this movie. People always talk about how the first 15 minutes are the best 15 minutes in any Pixar movie, and to that I kinda agree. But I also enjoyed the full movie. It never really got boring for me. Oh yeah, and the soundtrack. Another banger from Michael Giacchino himself. S tier. So, Toy Story 3 was pretty good. In my opinion, this was a great Toy Story movie and should have been the end of the series, but I'll get back to that later. So Toy Story 3 revolves around Andy going to college and accidentally getting his toys thrown out by his mom. So then the toys decide to ditch Andy and go to a daycare. But as it turns out, the daycare is just a giant prison for toys led by a corrupt bear named Lotso. Now this is all great and everything. I mean, I really like the idea of a giant daycare toy prison, but there was really no good motive for Lotso to be evil. Like, yeah, his backstory is pretty sad with him being replaced by his owner, but I feel that there was really no need for him to literally take control of the whole daycare. I mean, not to mention that he's a blatant copy of the prospector from the last movie. Oh yeah, and Buzz is speaking Spanish for like 1/3 of the movie, which I thought was pretty funny.
Oh my god.
So anyways, the toys pretty much plan an entire prison break and they almost escape, but not until Lotso corners them. And then Lotso gets betrayed, which causes them to get all thrown at the garbage truck. They're then taken to a giant conveyor belt leading to a fiery death, but then they get saved at the last second by a bunch of aliens. So after all that happened, Andy decides what's best is to just donate his toys to Bonnie, including Woody, which he wasn't planning on giving in the first place. Only on the condition that she takes good care of them. And that should have stayed the end, but they just had to make another. Yeah, it was a pretty good movie. Not as good as Toy Story 1 or 2, but nevertheless still a pretty great watch. A tier. So, whenever the topic of bad Pixar movies come up, everyone usually mentions Cars 2, and me having only seen this movie once before when I was like 6, I didn't really understand the hate. But now having seen it again, I now fully understand. I mean, I didn't really like the first Cars movie all too much, but it wasn't really that bad. This is just insulting. What the hell were they thinking, turning a movie where every character is a car into a spy movie? Okay, let's get the plot out of the way first. Lightning McQueen is racing this Italian race car, so then he travels to Tokyo to meet him there and race him. Oh yeah, and remember Mater from the first movie? Let's just take him and give him like 20 more scenes and also make him extremely annoying. Yeah, that's pretty much Mater in this movie. He's a dumb screw-up who pretty much causes most of the problems. So then Mater meets the spy guy, and then the spy somehow confuses him for an agent? I don't even know how that's possible, but okay. They do all of this stuff with them being spies and whatnot until eventually the ending where the twist villain is revealed. Oh no, it's this car. I don't even know what the f is his name is. Yeah, the plot is confusing as hell. I don't even want to get into all the scenes, so I'll just leave you with this. If you enjoyed the first Cars movie, just watch Cars 3 and skip this one. All of the characters are so annoying and have the mental capacity of a 3-year-old. I know that this movie is supposed to make you feel sympathetic to Mater or whatever, but throughout the entire movie, I was just kind of hoping for Mater to die in a fire or something. I did not care for any of these characters whatsoever. Lightning McQueen could have crashed and died at the end, and I still wouldn't have changed my opinion on this movie. I'll say though, this would have probably been a better Pixar movie if it weren't a Cars movie. I mean, I like the idea of a spy movie that revolves around racing and blowing up cars and stuff, if only they were just humans. I had no idea what anyone over at Pixar were thinking when they made this. F tier. If I could describe this movie with one word, it would be dull. Seriously, this might be one of the worst princess movies I have ever seen. So anyways, this movie is about the Scottish princess girl who rebels against her parents since she doesn't want to be a princess. So she decides to visit an old witch and accidentally turn her mother into a bear. Yes, this is the actual plot of the movie. Eventually, the Scottish people find her and try to kill her, but then the sunrise happens and I think that's when the potion wears off. And then she returns back to normal. The end. Yeah, I literally don't remember anything from this movie. I had to rewatch the final scene just to remember how it ended because I genuinely couldn't remember for the life of me. Anyways, yeah, that was Brave. Honestly, one of the weakest princess movies I have ever seen. Finally, a break from 2 garbage movies. You had no idea how much I wanted to watch this movie after sitting through Cars 2 and Brave. So Monsters University is a prequel to Monsters Inc., showing how Sullivan and Mike met and how they started working in the Scare Factory. So they first meet and start out as rivals, but then they get into an argument and accidentally break a scream canister. So then they're both failed by the Dean, but then Mike makes a bet to the Dean that if he wins the Scare games, he gets back to the Scare program. They eventually get to the final game where Mike has to scare some fake children, but then it is revealed that Sully cheated. Yeah, so Sully pretty much just confesses to the Dean as he felt bad for cheating. Meanwhile, Mike breaks into an actual Scare Factory to prove himself that he was actually scary. He wasn't. So then Sully distracts the Dean and then gets to the Scare Factory and reconciles with Mike. But then once they're about to get out, it turns out that the door was disabled from the outside. So their only way out would be to scare people from the inside to power the door back on. So then they work together, traumatize some police officers, and escape the door. They get expelled from Monsters University at the end, but then get a job at the Scare Factory where they climb up the ranks and eventually become scarers. I mean, for a Monsters Inc. prequel, it was okay. One little nitpick that I have with it is that they should have showed more scenes with Randall in it. They only show him at the start of the movie with him being Mike Wazowski's nice roommate, but I also wanted to see him become more of what he is in Monsters Inc. Also, the villain in this movie is kinda mid. Like, she doesn't really do anything very interesting. She fails Mike and Sully at the start and that's really it. Still though, this movie isn't that bad. A tier. So, this movie was pleasantly good. So, Inside Out is told through the perspective of the 5 emotions inside of a girl named Riley's head.
Do you ever look at someone and wonder, what is going on inside their head?
They have like an HQ and everything with little balls serving as memories. So anyways, Riley moves to San Francisco and lives in a cramped house.
Hey everyone, we are live from my backyard.
But because Sadness accidentally tampered with some memory, Joy and Sadness get thrown out of the HQ, meaning that Riley can't experience happiness or sadness until they come back. Yeah, for the first part of the movie, Sadness was just kind of an annoying, dumb idiot. They come across Bing Bong, who was an old imaginary friend of Riley, and they also come across a lot of places, like this Dream Production Studio and this Cloud City. Eventually, Riley becomes a depressed emo teenager, and so anger, fear, and disgust implant an idea in her head. That idea being to run away from her family. But luckily, Joy and Sadness return to HQ and stop her from running away. So she returns back home and the end. This movie was actually really good in my opinion. It deals with powerful emotions and was surprisingly really dark. Although there are still some flaws in it, like the fact that it was very formulaic and predictable. The characters were okay, I guess. I mean, they pretty much have as much depth as a cheese sandwich. The overall message of the movie is more mature, and this movie is also a lot more complex than most of the Pixar movies. But it's still a very powerful movie nonetheless. I'll give it an A tier. A dinosaur movie. Well, it can't be that bad, right? Yeah, I'll keep this review short. This movie blows. It's not even like Hop or Cars 2 where I can laugh at it for being horrible. No, this one's just sad and depressing. So this story follows a world where the asteroid that originally killed all of the dinosaurs just simply missed Earth. And so we get Arlo, our main character, with an especially annoying voice. He gets lost because he falls down a river, so then he befriends this caveman child and they go on doing wacky and funny adventures. There's also like a few scenes where they get attacked by pterodactyls. I honestly can't remember anything from this movie. In the end, Arlo gives the caveman kid up for adoption to this other family. Yeah, that's really the whole movie. It's incredibly tedious. What a nothing movie. I guess I can't really blame them for this. I mean, the movie did end up in production hell. It got delayed several times and was even entirely revisioned at one point. One thing I will give it credit for is that the backgrounds look really nice. The CGI has honestly been stepped up in this movie. Of course, it doesn't match the goofy ass design of Arlo, but I guess Pixar wanted to use their ray tracing for this movie. Yeah, don't watch this movie. Get in thy bin.
What a wonderful
Yeah, it's okay. I don't really know what to think of Finding Dory. I mean, on one hand, I think it's an okay movie, and on the other hand, there are some moments in it I just can't stand. But I'd say that it's still a better movie than Finding Nemo. I said it. Come at me. Finding Dory is basically Finding Nemo, except replace Nemo with Dory. It tells us the story of how Dory lost her parents at such a young age and her journey with meeting Marlin and trying to find them. I don't know why, but I really feel like Dory is more of the main character in the Finding Nemo universe more than Nemo himself. Just Dory's history and her journey with her parents really makes Finding Nemo feels more like a side mission than the main plot. Anyways, so Dory ends up in a marine life institute where she meets Hank. So Hank is this octopus who wants to transfer to Ohio or something. He helps out Dory in exchange for her tag, and they meet this whale who constantly bumps her head along the way. Meanwhile, Nemo and Marlin try to traverse the land and search for Dory. One thing that I really liked about this movie is that there are a lot more scenes that happen in the land, and that makes for more creative scenes during the movie. Like, the movie isn't just let's swim over here and let's swim over there, but since they're actually trying to traverse the land, they have to get a lot more creative. Eventually, Dory reaches the place where she thinks her parents are, only to find out that they aren't there anymore and that they got thrown into some kind of quarantine. So then she goes there, but unfortunately Hank gets spotted and Dory gets flushed down the drain. But lucky for her, because her parents are literally just sat there waiting for her. Once that's over, now it's time for them to all reunite and try to save Hank from a van, which they do so by literally committing Grand Theft Auto and driving the van off the side of a goddamn hill. What an ending. Overall, this movie was a pretty good sequel and an overall improvement to Finding Nemo in my opinion. What I will say though is that they used the trope of Dory not being able to remember anything way too constantly to the point where it gets on my nerves. That's really the only nitpick I have with this movie, so be Cars 3. I'm laughing. That's a funny joke. Oh wait, that's a real movie. And I thought The Good Dinosaur was Pixar's most forgettable movie. Yeah, so Cars 3 was pretty mediocre, I guess. It's about the Lightning McQueen losing to a new car called Storm because he's old and washed up. So he decides to start training with this yellow car girl. Yeah, I have no idea what her name is. They go undercover in this derby, but then the yellow car splashes Lightning, accidentally exposes him. This causes Lightning to get mad at her, and then she reveals that she also wanted to become a racer, but couldn't because she didn't think she was good enough. Now, I don't know about you, but that sounds to me like a skill issue. So then McQueen decides to visit Doc's hometown and learn from his mentor. Oh yeah, did I mention that Doc somehow died between Cars 2 and Cars 3? It's never explained why he died, he's just dead. So Lightning McQueen meets with Doc's mentor and he teaches him how to use the technique called drafting. Pretty much, if you've ever played any racing game, drafting is sort of the same as slipstreaming, where you block your opponent's back, reducing the movement of air and creating low pressure. So anyways, Lightning McQueen races for the first half, but then stops to let the yellow car race instead because I guess she deserved a second chance. So she basically uses the drafting technique to catch up with Storm and then does an epic side flip to win the race. So yeah, that was Cars 3. You know how in Cars 2, Mater was probably on screen for like 50% of the whole movie? Yeah, well in this movie, he's probably on screen for like 1 minute. Another thing I find funny about this movie is that it has almost nothing to do with Cars 2. It never mentions any of the characters from Cars 2 or makes a reference to Cars 2. You can literally watch this movie after Cars 1 and it wouldn't matter. I mean, it was probably Pixar's fan service after delivering such a horrible sequel. Also, like, I have no idea who the hell this yellow car is, and I really don't care for her. She wasn't very likable or anything, and honestly, whether it would have been her or McQueen to beat Storm, I don't think it would have impacted my review any differently. C tier. Thank God for Coco. This movie is so unique and creative and at the same time so emotional. It presents such a great story with amazing characters, humor, and the culture. Holy crap, the Mexican culture in this movie is great. The music, the characters, the locations, it's all amazing. The story is about this kid named Miguel living in a family who hates music.
Try me, bitch.
I guess you could say they really wanted to avoid those pesky YouTube copyright claims. So Miguel is inspired by this guy called Ernesto, who is a famous musician that died because he was crushed by a giant bell.
Ring that bell to get notifications.
But as music is banned in his family, he learns the guitar in secret. On the Day of the Dead, Miguel finds out that his great-great-grandfather was actually Ernesto and tells his family the news. They didn't take too kindly to him. So then Miguel runs off to steal Ernesto's guitar, which sends him to the land of the dead, where he can interact with his dead relatives. Then Miguel meets this guy called Hector, who helps him try to reach Ernesto so he could be sent back to the living world. Oh yeah, and apparently if somebody forgets you in the real world, then you also die in the dead world. So after Hector and Miguel get into an argument, Miguel decides to just sneak into the party to meet Ernesto, but then Hector catches up and confronts Ernesto of stealing his songs. But then in a shocking plot twist, it is shown that what actually happened is that Ernesto poisoned Hector and took his songs without giving credit. You sly snake, Ernesto. Honestly, Ernesto is still one of the best twist villains in Pixar. I mean, I did not see that coming on my first watch. So then Miguel and Hector get thrown into a pit, but then we see that Hector is actually Miguel's great-great-grandfather. So then they infiltrate Ernesto's concert and do the cliche thing where they record the bad guy in front of a live audience to expose him.
The last thing you'd want in your Burger King burger.
Yeah, this is the only nitpick I have with this movie, but it was also kind of necessary. Anyways, so Miguel returns home with a blessing and oh my god, the ending. Probably the greatest ending to any Pixar movie. And no, I'm not crying, you are! Go watch this movie right now. S tier. Yeah, I have no idea what to think of this movie. It wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be, but at the same time, like, did we really need an incredible sequel? So anyways, this film literally starts a few seconds after the first one ends, with the Incredibles fighting some obscure villain. Unfortunately for them, they cause a lot of collateral damage, which makes the government ban superheroes again. So then Mr. Incredible, Elastigirl, and Frozone sign up for this sketchy superhero program led by this guy voiced by Bob Odenkirk, and also his sister Evelyn. The program aims to pretty much attach dash cam to superheroes and broadcast them to the public so that they can regain their trust. And let me just say, I find it so funny that this guy is being voiced by Bob Odenkirk, because whenever he talks in this movie, I just imagine Saul Goodman in his place.
Hi, I'm Saul Goodman. Did you know that you have rights? And that's why I fight for you, Albuquerque. Better call Saul.
So it turns out that the big superhero program was a scheme and Bob Odenkirk's sister Evelyn was the secret twist villain. Apparently she sabotaged the superhero program because her parents died and didn't get saved by superheroes. Well, that's a lame-ass motive. She invents like this screen that can hypnotize superheroes, which is how she gets them to do what she says. Meanwhile, Dash and Violet have to save everyone. So yeah, the superheroes all team up together to stop Evelyn. Luckily, Bob Odenkirk survives. Thank God, he was literally the only character I cared about. So yeah, that was the whole movie. It wasn't that good, but I guess it also could have been much worse. The villain is probably my #1 complaint. Like, if she hated superheroes so much, then why did she join her brother in trying to make superheroes illegal again, only to betray him and say, "Psych, I'm evil"? The motives just don't make too much sense. Otherwise, the plot of the movie is okay, I guess. It's not anything very great, it's just kind of meh. It's whatever though. B tier. Did you really think that Toy Story 3 was going to be the last movie of the series? Well, it must suck to be you. Toy Story 4. Where do I even start with this? So, you know how in the end of Toy Story 3, Andy gives all of his toys to Bonnie on the one condition that she loves them and takes care of them? Yeah, well, how about we take a big old dump on that ending? Remember Woody? Yeah, well, screw him, right? Let's make a new character out of a literal spork. Yes, this is a real thing. So, Bonnie creates a brand new toy in kindergarten. This stupid spork guy who pretty much tries to commit suicide for the first 25 minutes of the movie. Anyway, so during a road trip, Sporky jumps off a van. You already read the title. You already know the gist of the video. Today, I will be ranking every Pixar movie. Yes, all Did you really think that Toy Story 3 was going to be the last movie of the series? Well, it must suck to be you. Toy Story 4. Where do I even start with this? So, you know how in the end of Toy Story 3, Andy gives all of his toys to Bonnie on the one condition that she loves them and takes care of them? Yeah, well, how about we take a big old dump on that ending? Remember Woody? Yeah, well, screw him, right? Let's make a new character out of a literal spork. Yes, this is a real thing. So, Bonnie creates a brand new toy in kindergarten. This stupid spork guy who pretty much tries to commit suicide for the first 25 minutes of the movie. Anyway, so during a road trip, Sporky jumps off a van and Woody goes to rescue him. So then Bonnie gets to this carnival place, but then Woody and Sporky are still trying to reach the van. That's until Woody sees Bo Peep's lamp in an antique store window. Oh yeah, remember Bo Peep, the love interest for Woody that was gone by the third movie? Yeah, well, she's back in this movie. There's also the main villain of the movie, who is this doll girl who doesn't have a voice box, so she decides to kidnap Sporky and force Woody to give her his voice box. And Woody does it. I guess we're also supposed to sympathize with her or something. I don't really know. I didn't really like her all too much. There's also this stunt guy called Duke Kaboom, voiced by Keanu Reeves, so that was pretty cool.
Why do you come?
Anyway, so near the end, Woody has to make a choice. He either stays with Bonnie or he becomes a lost toy with Bo Peep. Now, there's no way that Woody would just abandon Bonnie, right? I mean, Woody for the past 3 movies has been nothing but loyal to Andy, which means that he's not just gonna... Nope. He stays with Bo Peep. Yeah, this movie kinda sucked. It didn't have a lot of the scenes with the classic toys, and Buzz Lightyear throughout this movie was just kind of stupid. They all felt out of character. I guess the one question I have left is, was it worth it for the $1 billion the movie made in the box office? Shame on you, Pixar. D tier. Okay, so I knew pretty much nothing about Onward before watching it, and now having watched it, it was meh. I don't think it's a terrible movie at all, but it is pretty boring and mediocre and painfully formulaic. So Onward takes place in a mythical world where there used to be magic and wonder, but then everyone just got lazy and decided to stop using magic. Think Dungeons and Dragons here. Anyways, so here we have our 2 main characters, Ian and Barley. Ian is your typical awkward teenager kid, and Barley is pretty much this huge nerd when it comes to magic and history. So on the 16th birthday of Ian, they get a staff from their dead dad, and as it turns out, Ian is a wizard and can bring their dad back to life for only 1 day. However, the spell fails and only half of their dad's body was made. So the entire movie is just them on an adventure trying to find the gem thing to power the staff so they can bring their dad back. They eventually end up back in the school where Ian fights a dragon with his spells. And the ending is basically Ian giving up meeting his dad so that Bailey can meet him. Yeah, it's not really anything too special of a movie. I mean, I barely remember anything of the actual plot besides the ending. And I feel like this movie could have been a lot better if it had more of a serious and emotional tone. But no, it's just kind of mid. C tier. Now this movie, I have no idea what to think of it. It's got some really good and powerful scenes, but there are so many things happening in this movie that my brain can't even process. This is also probably the most mature Pixar movie to date. Anyway, so Soul follows the life of Joe, who is a music teacher. He then gets an offer to play with this famous musician woman. He impresses her and gets the gig, but shortly after falls in a manhole and literally dies. So now he's basically in purgatory, where he could either choose to go to the afterlife or try and escape. He chooses to try and escape. So he somehow ends up in this place where a bunch of souls are getting assigned their personalities before getting sent to Earth. This is when we are introduced to the second main character named 22. 22 is this soul who has no interest in going to Earth, so she's just kind of living in the soul world as opposed to living her life on Earth. Until the 2 of them meet this meditator guy who helps Joe find his body. But then 22 accidentally gets pushed down this hole, and now 22 is in Joe's body and Joe is in the cat's body. I really love most of the 22 scenes when she's in Joe's body. Her experiencing life for the first time and enjoying every tiny thing was clever and brought a whole new perspective to me. I especially love the scene in the barbershop where 22 basically becomes a philosopher. Anyway, so then they get transported back into the soul world where 22 basically gives up her Earth pass to Joe so they can go back to Earth. But then he feels bad for 22, so he goes back into the soul world and gives her the badge. So obviously now he has to go to the afterlife, right? But no, he gets a second chance to live life again. The end. Okay, so I may not have been a very big fan of this ending. I feel like he should have definitely just gone to the afterlife and died. I feel that would have been a more impactful ending rather than him getting a second chance. It really sells the message that you should appreciate your life and every second of it, but whatever. I'm willing to let it slide. This movie was honestly really good, and there are more powerful and emotional scenes in here accompanied by great music. In conclusion, great movie, great soundtrack, but not really a masterpiece. A tier. Okay, this is a great movie. It has such a simple concept and it is executed so damn good. The only rules in Luca are pretty much just okay, so if monster become wet, they become monster, but if monster dry, they become human, which I find nice because it's actually easy to comprehend. Okay, so here's the plot of the movie. This kid named Luca, who comes from a sea monster family living near Italy, decides to run away from his family after prohibiting him to go to the surface world. I guess because the humans wanted to kill the sea monsters. He is influenced by this other sea monster kid named Alberto, who shows him the way of living like a human. They then dream of owning a Vespa and traveling around the world with it. So they go to the human town and search for a Vespa. Luca and Alberto then team up with this girl named Julia in a race where they can use the money to buy a Vespa. There's also the main villain of this movie, Ercole, who's basically just some random kid with a big ego. And what I love about this is that it's not some big twist villain or anything. They literally introduce him 30 minutes into the movie. So then they start living in the human town for a while until Luca stops showing interest in the Vespa because he wants to go to school instead. So then Alberto decides to intentionally reveal to them that he was a sea monster.
I see what you mean by the plot thickening.
Of all the plot twists in all 26 of these movies, this is the one that struck out to be the most. I mean, this and Coco. So then Alberto runs away. Luca then tries to reconcile with him, and it is at this point that it's revealed that the only reason why Alberto lives in the human world is because his father abandoned him years ago. Yikes, seems like fatherless behavior. Luca, determined even more to win the race now, competes by himself without the help of Julia. But then it starts raining. What will Luca do now when... So then Luca and Alberto continue the race together as sea monsters, with Ercole chasing behind them with a freaking harpoon. They then cross the finish line, but then get threatened by the townsfolk. But then everyone just kind of forgives them and accepts them into society, I guess. And just like that, racism was no more. Luca and Alberto eventually buy a Vespa, but Alberto sells it for money so he could buy a train ticket for Luca so he could go to school. What a great ending. Overall, I am very satisfied with this movie. It has great humor, a great art style, and has a very good story. Just don't look into the Luca fandom. Anyways, A tier. Great movie.
I'm never gonna let you cry, oh cry.
So, I was kind of surprised when I watched this movie for the first time. It was a very unique change of pace compared to what I'm used to. Also, this movie is hilarious as hell. I am officially crowning this the funniest Pixar movie of all time, mainly because of this one scene. So Turning Red follows the life of May, who is a 13-year-old Chinese student. Then one day, May and her friends talk about a store clerk and how they had a crush on him. And then May decides to literally draw Rule 34 of her in the store clerk. But then her mom finds out about it and then storms into the store, embarrassing her in front of everyone. Alright, 15 minutes into the movie, we're already off to a great start. So that night, May has a nightmare, and the next day she turns into a red panda, which I think is a metaphor for menstruation. I mean, I don't know, I'm not a girl. So pretty much the rules are, if May has a strong emotion, she turns into a red panda, but if she remains calm, the red panda goes away. But since she wants to raise enough money to go to a BTS concert, she uses the panda to earn money.
Capitalism.
Her parents also set up like a ritual thing for her, but she just escapes it to go to the BTS concert instead, which angers her mom, which triggers her red panda. Unfortunately for them, her red panda is literally the size of Godzilla.
It's Godzilla!
They do the ritual thing in the BTS concert, and we learn that May's mom is also suffering from trauma caused by generations. Don't you just love Asian parents? So then the movie ends with May embracing the red panda because it's who she is. I was kinda caught off guard with this movie. Also, the art style is really good in this movie. It's definitely a change from the ultra realism in movies like Sing 2 or The Good Dinosaur, so I appreciate it for that. Overall, pretty good movie. B tier. Lightyear kinda sucked. It's not really insulting, it's just they could have done so much better than this. This movie was sort of just really boring all around. Like, I'm struggling to mention anything that sets this movie apart from the others. I guess the one thing that's great about this movie are the graphics. They look so incredible. Anyways, so Lightyear follows, you guessed it, Buzz Lightyear, who seems to somehow be more annoying in this movie than in the Toy Story movies. Like, this dude has such a big ego that it kinda just makes him annoying. Anyways, so Buzz and his colony get stranded on this planet planet, and so Buzz must try to correct his mistake by trying to return home. So he uses some hyperspeed fuel to test drive his spaceship, and guess what? Every time Buzz is gone for 5 minutes, in his planet it's actually 4 years. I wonder where I've seen this before. But then he steals a ship along with his robot cat and goes like 20 years into the future, which completely screws up the timeline. He teams up with his crew, who is pretty much just like a budget version of Rogue One from Star Wars. He then meets Zurg, who, plot twist, is himself from the future and is also a bad guy. I mean, this kind of sucked for continuity reasons because in Toy Story 2 we actually learned that Zurg is Buzz's father, so that kind of puts a dent in the continuity if you think about it. So anyways, Buzz literally just explodes evil Buzz and returns back home to his planet, where he just accepts it as his home. I don't really see a reason why anyone should watch this movie. It doesn't really have a good story with memorable characters or anything redeemable about it. It kind of seems like they were really just trying to make a Lightyear movie for the sake of making a Lightyear movie. So yeah, D tier. In conclusion, Pixar, while having some flawed movies, I think should still be the golden standard for animated children's movies. As for the ranking, here is the finished tier list. In order, we have Ratatouille, the greatest Pixar movie in my opinion. Fight Me. Toy Story, great classic that still holds up today. WALL-E, only word I can describe it with is masterpiece. Coco, the movie with the greatest and most emotional ending. The Incredibles, another classic and memorable Pixar movie. Monsters Inc., funny movie with funny green man from the meme. Up, peak Pixar. Toy Story 2, an amazing sequel. Toy Story 3, a great movie which should have been the ending to Toy Story. Luca, simple slice of life movie. Soul, the most mature Pixar movie on this list and is also very thought-provoking. Inside Out has some flaws, but I still feel is very creative. Monsters University, an okay prequel. Turning Red, probably the funniest movie on this list. Cars, for a movie about anthropomorphic living cars, it's alright. Finding Dory, it was okay, but just a tad bit better than Finding Nemo in my opinion. Finding Nemo, yeah, it was okay. Incredibles 2, okay movie, but has a very weak villain. A Bug's Life, it's mediocre and boring in some scenes. Onward, really forgettable movie, not really anything unique either. Cars 3, still mediocre but better than Cars 2. Lightyear, just don't even bother with this one. Toy Story 4, probably a movie made solely because of money.
Shut up and take my money.
Brave, boring. Cars 2, a really stupid spy movie with barely anything to do with Cars 1. The Good Dinosaur, once again, get in thy bin! Honestly, I'm not too dissatisfied with Pixar's catalog. They've made some very questionable movies in the past, but also balanced it out with the good ones. And watching every Pixar movie has really made me realize why I love animated movies so much. It's made me come to appreciate good filmmaking as a whole. It reminds me of all the great and timeless storytelling that'll be remembered for years to come. Pixar, thank you so much for making these movies, no matter if they're great or not so great. Once again, if you want to, go and watch these movies and form your own opinions on them. Anyways, this video has been going on for way too long now. What's Pixar been working on these days anyway? Wait, is that... Oh god, no! Wait, is that... Oh god, no! So the new Mario movie has just came out, and let's get real for a second. We all expected this movie to flop hard, and by flop hard, I mean this movie was literally walking on a tightrope above a steaming hot pile of angry reviews. First, there's the immediate backlash to the questionable casting choices. Second, the fact that Illumination of all companies were making this movie. And third, it's a video game movie adaptation, which obviously doesn't have the best rep going into it. Suffice to say that everyone had expectations going into this movie through the roof, me included. And now that I've finally watched it, over a month after its release, I can officially say that this movie was... sorta good. Okay, hear me out for just a minute. This movie is nowhere near a masterpiece, okay? Don't listen to what any critics over at Rotten Tomatoes are saying. If you go into this movie expecting to see a fun movie, then you're going to get a fun movie. Sure, the story might be kind of thin and predictable, but it's okay because this movie somehow never manages to stay boring. One thing that I've noticed from this movie is that there is so much happening in every minute. It seems as if Illumination took note that their fan base was a bunch of children with withering attention spans and just sort of apply the techniques necessary. This movie also has a lot of references. You've got Baby Mario and Luigi, the GameCube Jingo, the Tanuki suit, Rainbow Road, even the blue shell somehow manages to make an appearance. Wario and Waluigi were there. Okay, maybe not Wario and Waluigi, but it would have been cool. The references, although not really contributing much to the story, really made me appreciate the movie a whole lot more. I mean, seriously, this movie probably has enough fan service to feed the Nintendo community for the next decade. They even have Charles Martinet as a minor role. Martinet? They even have Charles Martinet as a minor role in this movie to voice Mario in the commercial. Speaking of Mario's voice, I think it's time we talk about the voice acting. Chris Pratt. Well, he was in the movie. I mean, this guy loves Mario. You could really tell that he spent hours of his life stomping Koopas. Controversial topic, I know, but I feel like having Chris Pratt voice Mario was sort of the right call for this movie, because 90 minutes of Charles Martinet's voice would have probably been exhausting to sit through. Thankfully, Chris Pratt's voice acting in this movie is, well, average. Charlie Day's Luigi, though, was actually pretty good, even though Luigi in this movie was just kind of treated as a punching bag. Anya Taylor-Joy as Peach was also pretty good. Seth Rogen was okay. Jack Black, though, caught me extremely off guard. Pretty much in the middle of the movie, when it was revealed that Bowser's whole motive was to marry Princess Peach, he sings a musical number, and my god, it goes hard. My man poured out his heart and soul in the recording booth. Peach in this movie is also an absolute menace. You'd expect her to be the one captured by Bowser, but no, it's Luigi for some reason, and now Peach is just a super OP character, which I think was okay, but they should have definitely given Luigi some more time to shine in the movie. The animation in this movie is also really good. It has that same colorful, vibey feel to the Minion movies with its, for some reason, overly realistic RTX shaders. But hey, the environments in this movie are wonderful. There are scenes in this movie where Mario and Princess Peach are traveling through the Mario universe, and my god, is it beautiful. The whole world building aspect was done so incredibly well. You know what else has cool world building aspects and cool graphics? Raid Shadow Lemons! Have you ever heard of Raid Shadow Legends? Of course you haven't. I am the only channel on YouTube who's ever been sponsored by them. But hold on a second. What are my top 3 reasons to play Raid Shadow Legends? Number 1, the gameplay is killer. Number 2, the enemies are bigger. Number 3, this guy is a Neanderthal. Raid has been a top game on the Apple and Google Play Store for a very long time. It also won't be long till I raid your house if you don't download Raid Shadow Legends. This MMORPG has several characters. It also has several campaigns, several plotlines, and an insane cast of talented voice actors, none of which being Chris Pratt. He's so cool. This month, Raid is offering new content such as new champions, new events, and a new artifact set. But don't take it from me. Take it from this Macedonian guy I found off the street.
For those bastard mother bitches that kept raiding down my house, I hope you apologize for your behavior in passion, because now I have... Time to crank things up.
Just try to keep up.
Hail, warrior. You fought well.
No mom ever looks at that beautiful baby laying in her arms and thinks mental illness. Jason did not have a lot of symptoms that we could point to before he received his diagnosis. He had told us about some bizarre things that he thought were taking place in his life.
I thought you make eye contact, and then they instantly connected with me. I mean, there was a time when I wore sunglasses all over the place because I didn't want to make eye contact with anybody.
We had to watch him spiral down to that awful, awful place. The last time Jason was hospitalized was about 5 years ago.
Raid Shadow Legends!
So what are you waiting for? Download Raid. Massive water leakage on the news. So then Mario and Luigi try to investigate and stop the water leakage, but then get sucked into a pipe. Mario ends up in the Mushroom Kingdom, while Luigi ends up in fucking Ohio. Can't even have dry bones in Ohio. You're gonna have a bad time. Luigi then gets captured by Bowser and pretty much stays captured for like 90% of the entire movie. Rip to all the Luigi fans out there. So anyways, after Mario meets with Peach, they then have this training montage to holding out for a hero for some reason, which I thought was a pretty creative way of introducing all these random Mario mechanics in the games and making them make sense within the world. Anyways, after this, Mario and Peach go on to recruit the Kongs to help them in defeating Bowser. But to recruit the help of the Kongs, Mario must fight Donkey Kong in a 1v1. Mario somehow still wins in a cat suit. Anyway, so now with Donkey Kong on their side, they drive back to the Mushroom Kingdom in carts, which I think is a reference to some Mario game? I don't really know though. However, they get ambushed by Bowser and his gang. Mario and Donkey Kong almost get away, but then get hit with a blue shell. Peach then warns everyone in the Mushroom Kingdom about Bowser.
Bowser is coming.
Eventually, Bowser does come and proposes to Peach at gunpoint, kidnapping Peach and forcing her to marry him. Gee, Bowser sure do loves his Stockholm Syndrome. Anyways, at the wedding, Peach smuggles an ice flower and frees Bowser. Mario also arrives and frees everyone, but then Bowser launches a bullet bill that somehow ends up going through a pipe and sucking everyone in it. But then Mario and Luigi grab Bowser's star and pretty much become invincible. And after a solid beating to the death, Bowser is defeated and gets shrunk down and put in the jar. We don't talk about the jar in these parts. Overall, the Mario movie delivered. It was definitely a movie with Mario in it. It's not an amazing movie by any means. I mean, in fact, if you've never played a single Mario game or consumed any Mario-related content, then I don't recommend that you watch it. It feels like a really exclusive movie because of the fact that nothing is really explained in it. It just kind of relies on you, the viewer, to already know how the Mario universe works in a certain way. Like, none of the power-ups are really explained, nor the star, nor the giant bullet bill in the end. And I mean, for someone who's never played a Mario game before, this movie must absolutely make no sense to them. And although I don't think this movie is that bad, I'm still not entirely satisfied with it. The music in this movie was also okay, at least for the soundtrack portion of it. My main complaint with the music is the random over-the-top 80s and 90s licensed music that just play out of nowhere. And I know that this is an Illumination movie, and Illumination has this habit of just cramming in licensed music in their movies, but really? This was just kind of unfitting and overkill. But despite the fact that this movie isn't the second coming of Christ in movie form, I still found it very enjoyable. The voice acting was passable.
It's a me. Mario.
The animation was colorful and expressive, the story was a story, and the characters were more marketable than ever. I might not be the biggest Mario or Nintendo fan, but this movie is definitely enough for me to enjoy and probably forget once I leave the movie theater. If you want a movie to simply take your mind off of life for a good 1 hour and 30 minutes, then go watch this. I know that this movie has pretty much the entire fanbase divided because half of the people who watched it thought it was an enjoyable and alright movie, while the other half completely disagreed. And by that, I'm looking at you, Rotten Tomatoes. Let's just all agree that this movie pales in comparison to the original Super Mario Bros. Movie. Final verdict, it's pretty good. 6 out of 10. S tier for Illumination. Anyways, that's all I gotta say. Before I go, let me just plug my shit. Follow me on Twitter, join my Discord, and remember, raid Shadow Lemons!
We're the Mario Brothers, and plumbing's a game. We're not like the others who get all the fame. When your sink is in trouble, you could call us on the double. We're faster than the others, you'll be hooked on the brothers.
I'd like to thank Stitch Fix for taking care of the shopping.
For getting my fit just right. For finding me looks that work for me and my budget. Now getting dressed is so easy.
You just get me.
They get me.
You just get me.
And they'll get you too.
Take your style quiz today.
Escalade IQ. This is the intro to the all-electric Cadillac perfection like Zoom. And on a full charge, you get 450 miles without the
massive water leakage on the news. So then Mario and Luigi try to investigate and stop the water leakage, but then get sucked into a pipe. Mario ends up in the Mushroom Kingdom, while Luigi ends up in fucking Ohio. Can't even have dry bones in Ohio, you're gonna have a bad time. Luigi then gets captured by Bowser and pretty much stays captured for like 90% of the entire movie. Rip to all the Luigi fans out there. So anyways, after Mario meets with Peach, they then have this training montage to holding out for a hero for some reason, which I thought was a pretty creative way of introducing all these random Mario mechanics in the games and making them make sense within the world. Anyways, after this, Mario and Peach go on to recruit the Kongs to help them in defeating Bowser. But to recruit the help of the Kongs, Mario must fight Donkey Kong in a 1v1. Mario somehow still wins in a cat suit. Anyway, so now with Donkey Kong on their side, they drive back to the Mushroom Kingdom in carts, which I think is a reference to some Mario game? I don't really know though. However, they get ambushed by Bowser and his gang. Mario and Donkey Kong almost get away, but then get hit with a blue shell. Peach then warns everyone in the Mushroom Kingdom about Bowser.
Bowser is coming.
Eventually, Bowser does come and proposes to Peach at gunpoint, kidnapping Peach and forcing her to marry him. Gee, Bowser sure do loves his Stockholm Syndrome. Anyways, at the wedding, Peach smuggles an ice flower and freezes Bowser. Mario also arrives and frees everyone. But then Bowser launches a bullet bill that somehow ends up going through a pipe and sucking everyone in it. But then Mario and Luigi grab Bowser's star and pretty much become invincible. And after a solid beating to the death, Bowser is defeated and gets shrunk down and put in the jar. We don't talk about the jar in these parts. Overall, the Mario movie delivered. It was definitely a movie with Mario in it. It's not an amazing movie by any means. I mean, in fact, if you've never played a single Mario game or consumed any Mario-related content, then I don't recommend that you watch it. It feels like a really exclusive movie because of the fact that nothing is really explained in it. It just kind of relies on you, the viewer, to already know how the Mario universe works in a certain way. Like, none of the power-ups are really explained, nor the star, nor the giant bullet bill in the end. And I mean, for someone who's never played a Mario game before, this movie must absolutely make no sense to them. And although I don't think this movie is that bad, I'm still not entirely satisfied with it. The music in this movie was also okay, at least for the soundtrack portion of it. My main complaint with the music is the random over-the-top 80s and 90s licensed music that just play out of nowhere. And I know that this is an Illumination movie, and Illumination has this habit of just cramming in licensed music in their movies, but really? This was just kind of unfitting and overkill. But despite the fact that this movie isn't the second coming of Christ in movie form, I still found it very enjoyable. The voice acting was passable.
It's a me, a Mario.
The animation was colorful and expressive. The story was a story, and the characters were more marketable than ever. I might not be the biggest Mario or Nintendo fan, but this movie is definitely enough for me to enjoy and probably forget once I leave the movie theater. If you want a movie to simply take your mind off of life for a good 1 hour and 30 minutes, then go watch this. I know that this movie has pretty much the entire fanbase divided because half of the people who watched it thought it was an enjoyable and alright movie, while the other half completely disagreed. And by that, I'm looking at you, Rotten Tomatoes. Let's just all agree that this movie pales in comparison to the original Super Mario Bros. Movie. Final verdict, it's pretty good. 6 out of 10. S tier for Illumination. Anyways, that's all I gotta say. Before I go, let me just plug my shit. Follow me on Twitter, join my Discord, and remember, raid Shadow Lemons!
We're the Mario Brothers, and plumbing's a game. We're not like the others who get all the fame. When your sick is in trouble, you could call us on the double. We're faster than the others, you'll be hooked on the brothers.
2022 has been an insane year for movies. And I mean, don't get me wrong, there has been some less than satisfactory movies that have come out this year, but hey, 2022 was still a great year for movies all around. So to celebrate the new year, I thought it would be kind of a fun experience to go through every major movie that came out this year, which I watched, and review each one of them. Starting off with... So for January, the only movie I actually watched was Hotel Transylvania 4. Yeah, anyone remember this movie? This movie exists. That's about it. It got delayed like 500 different times due to Sony trying to sell the rights to various streaming services. The movie itself wasn't even that good. I mean, I myself am not the biggest Hotel Transylvania fan, but hey, the first and second movie were pretty good. But throughout this movie, I just kind of had no emotion watching it. The story wasn't that good, it was just kind of weak, so I wasn't missing out on a lot to begin with. Also, ninjas in this movie.
Die in a fucking fire.
4 out of 10. For February, I watched 2 movies, Uncharted and this one. I don't even want to say the name of this movie. Let's begin with Uncharted. Honestly, this movie had a lot of potential, but it all got kind of wasted and I'm just disappointed with it. They have Tom Holland and Mark Wahlberg, which I mean, they're pretty good actors in their own separate movies. But Tom Holland as Nathan Drake is just not it, pal. He's not that guy. It feels like they just casted Tom Holland for the sake of casting Tom Holland. I mean, he looks nothing like Nathan Drake from the games. The story was kind of mediocre, the pacing was weird, the ending scene had a pretty cool set piece at least. And I mean, that's it. Honestly, this movie is not all that bad. You can still get some enjoyment out of it. It was just a bit disappointing. 6 out of 10. Moving on to Pinocchio, A True Story.
This is very suspicious.
So Pinocchio, A True Story is one of the 3 Pinocchio movies that came out this year and is honestly hot garbage. The only reason why I even wanted to watch this in the first place was to make a video on it, which I later scrapped. But to summarize it, voice acting whack, story whack, animation whack, trash movie. I could go more in depth as to why this movie was complete trash. So for once, starting with Turning Red, I still think that this movie is pretty good. I feel like it was a big risk for Pixar of all companies to make because of how much short was compared to other Pixar movies. Once again, this movie stands the test of time. 7.5 out of 10, good job. Next movie, The Batman. Now, this is an absolute banger of a movie. When we all heard that Batman was going to be played by Robert Pattinson, everyone just kind of questioned the casting choice as we were basically going to be getting an emo Batman.
I guess not.
But my god, does he pull it off. In this movie, we get a younger Batman who's still trying to figure out the ways of, well, becoming Batman. Like, he has his cool gadgets and stuff, but he still makes mistakes and is generally less experienced. Which I thought was a great idea for the in this movie. I love Paul Dano very
It's your boy, Riddler.
Batman to solve. And also, people die in very gruesome ways. This movie is just overall very good. Keep it up, Matt Reeves. 9 out of 10. Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. Honestly, what a fitting title. This movie is just outright insane. It feels like a bit straight out of Rick and Morty, but extended to a whole movie. Not to mention that this entire movie felt like a giant acid trip. It's pretty much about this woman who is apparently the chosen one and must jump through the multiverse to save everyone. Not to mention that apparently the editing and VFX on this movie was done entirely by 5 people who just watched YouTube tutorials. The main message of this movie is basically just be kind. And honestly, amidst the chaos in this movie, this is such a great and simple message. Highly recommend. 8 out of 10. For April, I watched 2 movies. Sonic 2 and The Bad Guys. Let's start with Sonic 2. Whoa, oh no, is that James Marsden? No, not again. No. I personally wasn't expecting a lot from Sonic 2. I watched the first one when it came out and it was actually kind of good. And this one is probably still on the same level as that movie, except maybe a tiny bit better. Jim Carrey obviously still carries this movie. I mean, this guy's a legendary actor, okay? We need to protect him at all costs. Tails and Knuckles were also pretty enjoyable to watch, and their characters stayed pretty loyal to their actual personalities. They felt genuine, and although I don't think this movie was very groundbreaking or anything, it wasn't that bad either. 7 out of 10. Moving on to The Bad Guys. This was definitely a big surprise to me because out of all movie studios to make a movie like this, it was DreamWorks. And I mean, with DreamWorks movies, it's pretty much always a hit or miss. They can either put out a work of art or complete rubbish. This movie, though, is different. It's a fast-paced action heist movie. I found the heist scenes pretty cool. They kind of reminded me of the Ocean's 11 movies. The art style is also the icing on the cake, as well as the fluid animations. The story isn't really too deep either, to the point where someone with room temperature IQ can understand it. It's just an overall fun movie to watch if you just want to turn your brain off for an hour. Also, the wolf is hot. 8 out of 10. For the month of May, I watched 4 movies. Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, Marmaduke, Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers, and Top Gun Maverick. First off, Doctor Strange. This movie kinda left me disappointed because I had high hopes for what they were gonna include in it. They could have literally included any Marvel character since we know that the multiverse exists. And I feel like they should have taken advantage of that fact more. We could have met Miles Morales or the entire Fantastic Four, not just Reed Richards. They could have even brought back the 3 Spider-Man or more X-Men characters. They had the opportunity. They should have just went crazy. Go stupid! The movie itself was sadly kind of boring. There's a lot more horror elements in this movie and blood and gore, which I thought was super fun. There's a scene where the main villain literally just brutally murders everyone in the room. Anyways, yeah, this movie is pretty weird, but ultimately it was just kind of bad.
It's Morbin time.
5 out of 10. Marmaduke. I mean, it's a movie, I can say that for sure. Let's just say this is not a very good movie. Just why? Why do the models look like this? Why was this movie even made? This is what you call the peak Pixar mom model right here. This movie is pretty much on the same level as Pinocchio, A True Story. Everything about it is pretty garbage. 1.5 out of 10. Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers. I mean, it was entertaining to say the least. This movie was honestly not that bad. The one main problem I have with this movie is that it doesn't really have